have an obsession with Fire Emblem Three Houses. I've already sung the praises of the Black Eagles and Blue Lions in previous videos, so today I'm going over my thoughts on the Golden Deer students, as I'll be ranking them from least favorite to favorite. Just a few things to keep in mind before we begin. This ranking is mostly based on how much I like these characters for their personality, not on how strong or useful they were to me. This video was also scripted before Free Hopes came out, so nothing that happens in that game influenced this video. But with all that said, here is my ranking of the 8 Golden Deer characters. This house definitely seems to be an odd one in the community. While a few of these characters seem to be universally loved, most others are divisive to say the least. And my number 8 pick definitely belongs to that second camp. Leonie seems to get the most hate out of all Golden Deers. I'm sure most of her fans must be tired of all the negativity, and I realize I'm not exactly helping by putting her at the bottom of this list. Here's the thing, I actually think Leonie is a pretty likable character. She's honest, supportive of her friends, and hey, I can always relate to being broke. The thing is, for most people, her good traits are overshadowed by her Byleth support. Yeah, this one kinda sucks. She basically has an obsession with your father and keeps talking about how she deserves to be his kid more than you do or something, I don't know. What's worse is that her B support only seems to unlock after Gerald dies. So for many people, she just came along telling you about how you never appreciated your father right after he died. The most baffling part about all this is that the A support is actually really good. It only took her 5 years to apologize for losing her temper, but after that she finally gives up on proving she's better than you and then reveals she made a final promise to Gerald that she'd always protect you in his place. For the last few years, the only things I remembered about Leonie were the Gerald jokes, so when rewatching all of her supports for this video, I was shocked to find out how much I ended up liking her. She can be blunt and things will get ugly if she loses her temper, but she can also be really considerate and she always tries to bring out the best in her friends. I also like her background as a poor villager. I can relate to her mindset of not letting things go to waste, and it also explains how she met Gerald. I think her whole relationship with him is pretty sweet actually. How did they mess up her Byleth B support so badly? So yeah, my TLDR on her. I was ready to put Leonie at the bottom spot for a long time, because the things I remembered the most about her were the Gerald jokes and her outbursts. But now I'm honestly more conflicted than anything. There are definitely parts where her Gerald shtick is executed well, but those few times where it failed just stick out so much. Honestly, if some of her lines towards Byleth just got cut out, she might have placed a bit higher. And hey, seeing as Byleth and Gerald don't seem to show up that much in Free Hopes, maybe she'll be more likable in that game. But as it is, Leonie is a character that I still like, even if her flaws really bother me. As I said before, this house has some of the most loved and hated characters in the game. However, I was actually surprised to find out how many people absolutely despise this character. I mean, I understand why he wouldn't be the most popular character, but damn, some people really seem to have some passionate hatred for Ignatz. From what I've seen, it's mostly because of 2 reasons. One is that he's apparently a bad unit, and I guess I got pretty lucky because he worked just fine for me. And secondly, he's a bit of a beta male. He's very considerate towards others, but he also has a low self-image, as he's quick to think of himself as a burden or inconvenience. It's actually a bit funny. Part of his insecurity is because he believes he's not that good of a fighter. So like, the community hates him for being weak, and then they also hate him for being insecure about it. Really nice, guys. However, I haven't touched upon what's arguably the biggest part of his character, his passion for art. As expected, he's very humble about his painting skills, but literally everyone tells him that he has a great talent for it. Art is also where he's at his most confident. He can motivate people with his speeches, he's eager to ask people about the scenery of different countries, and gets excited to show people the beauty around him. The thing is, Ignatz doesn't see this as a useful talent. His parents want him to have a well-paying job, and they sent him to the academy to become a knight. He knows he's far better at painting than fighting, and yet he's too afraid to follow his dream of becoming an artist. He's too afraid about what his parents would think, too afraid that people will look down on him, too afraid that he won't be able to make a proper career out of it. I've seen so many people that can relate to these struggles. People that are passionate about their hobbies or talents. Talents that got dubbed useless or a waste of time by others. One of those people was actually the English voice actor of Ignatz himself. Apparently he even teared up when recording his support, because it just reminded him of how much the support from others can mean to people. It really is amazing that this character has struck a chord with so many artistic and talented people out there. Unfortunately, I'm not talented, therefore Ignatz is gonna stay at the bottom of this list. Look, unlike with Leone, there isn't anything that I really hate about him, but there also isn't anything that I love about him either. I do think Ignatz has some great moments, but he just isn't a standout for me. I do hope that he keeps following his dreams, however. If these previous two were some of the most hated characters from their house, then this one is the polar opposite, a character no one can really bring themselves to hate. Next up, we sadly have Raphael. Now, let me remind you, this ranking is only based on personality, not combat utility. But let me tell you, if I did base this on the ladder, Raphael would be near the top for me. I heard he was supposed to be bad, but my Raphael was a monster that quad attacked everything with some gauntlets. Not that it mattered, because he usually killed everything in 1 or 2 hits anyway. Maybe I just got lucky, maybe he's only bad on maddening, I don't know. However, this just pains me even more to put him this low, because I actually like Raphael quite a bit. He has such a tragic backstory, and yet, despite that, he's one of the most positive and cheerful people you'll ever meet. I love myself some gentle giants, and let me tell you, he is everything I love about these kinds of characters. He's a big guy that just wants to help people, and he's a wholesome big brother. He's one of the most likable characters in this game. But I also feel like he has some of the least depth or complexity to him. He has a few endearing supports about his little sister and some others where he's just a supportive big bro to his friends, but then there are some that are just about eating or training. The funny clown music is basically his and Bernadetta's theme song, but there are only so many food jokes you can make before it gets old. Look, Raphael is a good boy, and I love how supportive he is towards people like Ignatz or Marianne. At the same time, however, I really can't bring myself to rank him any higher than this. Some characters need to take the fall here, but to be fair, I feel like Raphael would be willing to take one for the team. Oh boy, I might as well just delete my channel right now. So number 5 is Hilda. From what I've seen, she's one of the most popular characters in this entire game, and it's easy to see why. I remember that people were drawn to her ever since her design got revealed. Though ironically enough, I actually thought I would hate her based on what they showed us before launch. I specifically remember that every character had 2 sample voice lines, and this was one of the 2 from Hilda.
Keep me off the battlefield, and maybe I won't tell everyone you were daydreaming.
Yeah, this line just did not sit well with me. It made me think she would be a very manipulative and malicious person. But fast forward to the release and I was thankfully proven wrong. A big part of Hilda's character is that she's pretty lazy. She constantly avoids having to do chores by getting other people to do them for her. So yeah, she does end up manipulating others, but there's no malicious intent behind it. Her laziness actually comes from a sort of fear to let people down. She has an older brother, Holst, who always had to meet up to a bunch of high expectations, and Hilda was able to see the many times where he failed to meet them. She came to hate it when people force expectations on you, so if she never does anything herself, people will automatically expect less of her. So yeah, she is a bit manipulative and lazy, but she's also a really sweet girl who doesn't want to disappoint people. But despite this behavior, she's actually shown to be really capable. We can see she's good at stuff like organizing, crafting, and cleaning. I'm trying really hard to not make a Felix joke right here. And she might claim that she's a terrible fighter, but anyone that has ever used her can tell you that she's an absolute powerhouse of a unit. Surprisingly, she's also willing to put in a lot of work if it's to help a classmate out. She's all around also just a great friend to people like Marianne. At first I just kinda saw it as the popular girl bossing around the shy one to boost her own ego. But no, she genuinely tries to be nice and to help her. I might not like Hilda as much as some people, maybe because I already had some other waifus and don't pay attention to stats all that much, but at the end of the day, I still appreciate her a lot. Funnily enough, I think my low expectations of Hilda before the game came out might have actually worked out in her favor, which seems really in character for her. Well then, I just put one of the most popular characters from the game at number 5. Now let's put the main character of this route at number 4. Claude is a bit of a weird character for me. I remember being really interested in all 3 lords before the game came out. But the more trailers I saw, the more I got drawn to the other 2 house leaders. Pre-release there were some theories that Edelgard could be the Flame Emperor, so I just had to join her first. My second choice would have been Dimitri, however, mostly because of that scene from the trailers. So, I reached the end of Crimson Flower, Dimitri's death left a big impact on me, and I immediately went for Azure Moon next. Claude just ended up fading into the background for me before I got to his route. He just ends up feeling a bit out of place in this game, as one of the 3 protagonists at least. Edelgard is obviously important in every route, and Dimitri still ends up leaving a big impact in Crimson Flower and arguably in Silver Snow. But outside of his own route, Claude never really left that kind of impact on me. Whenever he's defeated on other routes, he just packs his bags and goes, well, that sucks, I guess you're the leader of the Alliance now. And when he does get his own route, it just feels like the writers didn't know what they wanted to do with him. I wish his goals to unite the world played a more important part in his story, and from what I've seen, it does look like this might be the case in Free Hopes. But let me remind you that this video was made before I got to play the full game. So yeah, those are my complicated thoughts on his place in the story. But don't worry, my thoughts on his character are equally as complicated. Okay, so Claude is a cool guy, but I feel like he sometimes borders on being too perfect. I mean, everyone thinks he's hot for one, both in the game and in real life. He's also really smart, a master strategist, a great fighter, charismatic and a strong leader. It's pretty hard to find any character flaws with this guy. At the end of the day, Claude's not really a character that undergoes a lot of development. Rather, he just feels like a nice guy to be around. That really is the best way I can put it. His route is just far more lighthearted than the others. You have these really emotional reunions with Edelgard and Dimitri, but with Claude it's, hey, Violet, what have you been up to for the last 5 years? All other endings are bittersweet to some extent, but with Claude it's, we're gonna kill the CEO of racism with the power of friendship! Look, for me it just feels like Claude has some untapped potential left, and maybe Free Hopes will tap into that. But if we're talking about Free Houses itself, his story just left me unfulfilled. It doesn't help that I played Silver Snow immediately after Verdant Wind, making his route feel even less special. But still, Claude is a very charismatic character, and the fact that I want to see more of him should tell you enough. Yep, we're back to the bad first impression squad with Lysithia. She's a bit of a brat. She's the youngest student at the academy, and because of that, she's eager to prove how mature she is. Despite that, she can act like a little kid sometimes. She loves shoving cake in her face, is scared to death of ghosts, and overall, she's really prickly. If you get on her bad side, which is really easy to do, she'll quickly remind you of every single thing you ever did wrong in your life. Seriously, what the hell is her Ignat support? So yeah, she's an immature little girl that constantly calls out others for being immature. That doesn't really sound like the most appealing character. Yet she also happens to be another fan favorite in this game. Hell, she was up there with the house leaders in terms of popularity right after the game just came out. For one reason or the other, people will usually start to warm up to her at some point. Just like with Hilda, her being a force of nature definitely helps, but the other thing that helps is her backstory. Lysithia and every child from her house were experimented on by those who slither in the dark. She was the very last one who survived, and after one experiment, she suddenly woke up with a second crest, as well as a drastically shortened lifespan. To make it even worse, her parents were struggling with their finances and with governing the territory ever since that incident. Because of that, Lysithia started studying non-stop to secure a good future for her parents after she's gone. She's very impatient, but that's because she's aware of how little time she has left. Does that excuse her lashing out towards others? Not really, but at the very least she ends up feeling sorry and often apologizes right afterwards. So yeah, she has her flaws, but I found her to be a really sympathetic and interesting character. By the end of my Golden Deer playthrough, I supported her, just because I wanted to make sure she would get her happy ending. Most people don't start off on the right foot with her, but once you get to know her, it's easy to see why she has so many fans. If any of you viewers are still keeping count of which characters are left, you might be a bit confused about the placement of one character. I mean, there's no way that guy is above Claude, Hilda, and even Lysithia, right? Oh yeah, this is happening. Okay, I know a lot of people can't stand Lawrence, and I get it. Believe me, I do. When I first joined the Golden Deer, I seriously thought I had found my least favorite character in the entire game. His design was not doing him any favors. This might just be me, but I think Lawrence seriously has one of the most punchable faces I have ever seen. And what the fuck is that haircut? But the more I got to know him, the more I just started to hate him even more. He's obsessed with his noble status and thinks he's leagues above the common folk. He scouts every noble girl at the academy to look for his ideal wife, but dodges commoner girls like the plague. All in all, he's completely full of himself. For the majority of the game, I legitimately wanted to hate this guy. But after a while, I just couldn't. It's not even because he got some crazy character development or something. Rather, it was just because I got a change in my perspective of it. Lawrence does come over as a stuck-up, snobbish noble, but most of that is just the result of his upbringing. According to him, noblemen not only have a duty to provide a home for commoners, but also a duty to protect them. So he might think that he's above mundane tasks, but he won't hesitate to lend a hand whenever someone needs any kind of help. So he basically sees noblemen as some kind of superhumans, and that does make him a bit full of himself. But he also tries his best to live up to the high bar he set for himself. It also explains why he thinks he can't marry commoners. His house is very influential in the Alliance, so he thinks marrying a well-connected woman would be the best for the future of the Alliance as a whole. Lawrence might be a bit misguided in some ways, but he's genuinely a nice guy and he does actually change some of his ways over time. He shows some shame of how he used to act in the past and even changes his mind on marrying commoners. I've said before that Caspar and a certain other character were my two big reminders to never judge a book by its cover. And yeah, surprise surprise, Lawrence is that second character. But after thinking about it for a while, he's a way better example than Caspar in my case. Lawrence is a bit of an idiot, but he's the best kind of idiot. He genuinely wants the best for others, and I'll admit that his overconfidence can get a good laugh out of me nowadays. There are other characters I changed my mind on over time, but it was never as drastic of a 180 as with Lawrence. He literally started off as my least favorite character in the entire game, yet ended up as my second favorite character from his house. Truly an achievement worthy of Lawrence Hellman Gloucester. Well then, I think it should come to no one's surprise that my favorite Golden Deer is Marianne. In my Blue Lions ranking, I said that I have this trinity of Three Houses characters, making up my favorites from the game and the entire franchise. As you could have guessed, Marianne is indeed that third character. What can I say? She's just perfect for me, man. She loves being around animals, hates being around people, and she also hates herself. She's just like me for real. So, for those who couldn't tell by just looking at her, Marianne is depressed. She tries to avoid people whenever she can and has very low self-esteem, which turns out to be because of her crests. Both of Marianne's parents disappeared because of unknown circumstances, and she believes the crest of her family is the cause. She believes herself to be cursed and to bring bad luck to anyone near her. I've actually heard some people say that her constantly apologizing and having self-pity in her C-support is repetitive or even frustrating to watch, kind of like with Bernadetta. And yes, I agree to an extent. It is frustrating to see someone be so self-deprecating. I think that was the whole point. Acting like this is self-destructive. It stops you from fulfilling your potential. It is bad for your mental state. It can push people away, and it can be frustrating to watch. But this part of her character is merely a foundation of sorts, a build-up for the main event. What happens to her after the time skip? There are two outcomes here. One if you recruit her or if you chose the Golden Deer, and another if she wasn't in your house. If you didn't recruit her, she straight up does not appear at any point after the time skip. Nobody even mentions her. While it was never confirmed, it is heavily implied that she ended her own life. If she is in your house, however, her life will change for the better. She interacts more with her classmates, and while they don't always hit it off right away, eventually Marianne does end up receiving a ton of support from every one of them. After the time skip, we can see a drastic change in her. For one, she doesn't look nearly as depressed as before, so that's a plus. But she also took people's advice to heart. She tries to be more positive in her outlook, she tries to talk more to others, she starts to accept the love of others, and she even becomes more comfortable with her crests. And speaking of her crest, what really solidified my love for Marianne was her paralogue. There we finally learn why Marianne hates her crest so much. Her crest is the one of Maurice, a warrior who transformed into a demonic beast and killed many people. His descendants got eradicated since they were seen as a symbol of misfortune. Throughout the entire game, the only person that seemed to hate Marianne for her crest was Marianne herself. In her paralogue, however, she gets directly confronted with her worst nightmare. A crest scholar comes in and accuses her of being a beast that kills people at night. However, Marianne is now willing to ask her friends for help and is able to put the beast, who turns out to be Maurice himself, out of his misery. Afterward, she's finally able to put her past behind her, all because of her own initiative. I've gone on record saying that I think there are no bad characters in this game, but you know what? Fuck this crest scholar? I was genuinely upset by how big of an asshole this guy was. But at that moment, I also just realized just how attached I got to Marianne. Free Houses in general has some of the most fleshed out characters from any game I ever played, and I think a big part of that is because of the 4 different routes. Because of these, we can see characters from their best and worst sides. We see what becomes of them when they get the right support, or no support at all. My other favorite characters, Dimitri and Dedu, both meet a tragic end on all the routes where you don't side with them. But that just makes it all the sweeter to see them overcome their struggles in their own routes. I feel the exact same for Marianne. We know how dire her situation was by her implied death if she's not recruited. So that just makes it even more satisfying to see her put her past behind her and to see her finally pursue her own happiness. You might say I have a very vanilla taste, but I honestly don't care. I know she's one of the most popular characters in the series, and if you'd ask me, I'd say that's more than deserved. Marianne is my favorite character from the Golden Deer, best girl from Free Houses, and up there with my favorites from the entire series. Thanks a bunch for watching, everyone. I also just want to say that I'm gonna take a little break from Fire Emblem videos, at least for a little while. I've been wanting to do this ranking Free Houses characters series ever since I beat the game in 2019, but had to put it off for various reasons. I originally also had a church character ranking planned, but with Xenoblade 3 around the corner, I want to focus more on that franchise for the time being. But I do plan to come back to FE videos someday. But anyways, I'll just end the video right here. Thanks again for watching.